Hello. This is Kristina, your host today, and welcome to the new episode of KSM Podcast, Doing Business More with Kristina. And today, my dear audience, I'm so excited to have my very special guest speaker, Lady Davina Herbert, from far away from Australia. And Davina, welcome to the show today.
Hi, Christina. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, Davina. Thanks for joining me. And tell us a little bit about you. Introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do.
A little bit about my background. I'm a mum to quite a large animal family. At the moment, we have horses, chickens, and dogs. And I'm also, apart from that, I'm also a wife, a stepmom, and a grandma as well. So, animals are my passion. I love animals. We got my first dog. My parents got me my first dog when I was 3. And I've had animals of different varieties pretty much ever since then. So,
Amazing, it's lovely, especially when people like a pet, and to have pets is some kind of our best friend. I mean,
yes, they're so amazing. So like with the dogs at the moment, we actually have 4 dogs. So we've got 2 girls and 2 boys. And the eldest girl is 4 and the youngest is 6 months, 6.5 months. So yeah, it just like, they're around us just about all the time. And so like particularly the dogs, that we have horses as well, but they're in the paddock, and I'm kind of pointing that way because the paddock's down that way.
yeah,
Um,
and you mentioned that you had a when your pet when you were 3 year old. And tell me what triggered you, and either that we talk about your childhood, but what triggered you, especially not just that way, to start what you do, who you are now in terms of your business, and what inspired you to start your pet energy therapy?
Well, really, it actually all started with me. I got quite sick when I was in my times are blurring now. I think it was my late 20s, and I had chronic fatigue, and so for a number of years I didn't do a lot. Like to get from my bed to the bathroom, which really wasn't that far, was quite a struggle. And luckily, I had very supportive parents, and we were looking for um, ways to help me, to help myself, to move beyond the chronic fatigue. And what I found was I explored things like crystals, aromatherapy, herbs, um, and then I onto oracle card decks and a whole lot of different things, as well as mindset. And all of these helped me, but they also put me on a path to exploring alternate medicines and alternate ways of healing and helping myself. Um, so then I used that for me. And then, of course, I had animals in the family. And I'm like, okay, so if they have something going on, um, I would also want to use those therapies to help, whatever they have going on. And then I realized, well, it's not only me who would also want to use some alternate therapies for themselves and their animals, that there's other people out there like me who also want to use alternate therapies for their animals. So that's really, and that kind of morphed into the animal communication side of things, which is really, um, how I explain it to people is my way of looking at it is we're energy beings first. And energy is really our first language. And after that is whatever spoken language we use, whether it's English, French, German, Czech, whatever it is, that's kind of like a secondary language to my way of looking at it. So when you look at it that way, to communicate to our animals is we're speaking from energy to energy. So we are both using our first language, like that's how they communicate. They communicate energetically. So we're just tapping into that first language. We're kind of stripping back a layer, if you like. And instead of like being all up here in the head of like thinking, we're kind of going more into the heart and the body, and we're communicating with the energy and the emotions with our animal friends. So
It's very interesting, and in your side when you felt that energy, and what is the focus? What is the main point in your um as I said, business now? What you do in terms of um therapy, pet energy therapy, like maybe for our audience, maybe there are people who can hear about your what you do for the first time, or they are not too much connected with that, and maybe just to explain to from your perspective about it.
well, one of the I guess one of my earliest clients was a horse that I had, and she had hurt herself. She'd hurt her hoof. I forget how she did it now. I think she actually knocked one of the fences in the her stall. Um, and of course, for a horse in particular, because they stand up about 23 hours out of 24. Like they don't, because um, uh, they can be prey animals for, in the wild. So they're very much watching, how they sleep. So being on their feet so much, their feet are very, very important for them, and hoof injuries can actually be life-ending if it's a serious thing. So this particular little mare had hurt her hoof, and the vet came out, and the vet said, okay, well, it's some sort of leg injury. Worst case injury, it's a spiral fracture. If it's a spiral fracture, then it's, good night. But at the worst case injury, best it's just like a bit of a sprain, or just like a normal fracture, which will just, if she is kept fairly immobile, it will heal itself. So, going with the vet advice and doing everything the vet said. So she had antibiotics, she had pain relief, and she was kept as immobile as possible. But to help her chances of not only healing but thriving afterwards, I started to use animal communication with her. And so it's a matter of going to her saying, hey, look, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and so in animals, it depends. Sometimes I might actually just show them a picture, and then showing her the picture of running, and because she likes to go quite fast, this little mare, and running and having a good time, and because mostly our body does know how to heal itself, whether we're human or whether we're animal. So, but we have to get into that right balance point of being able to heal ourselves. So, so to, like I said, to help augment what the vet was doing for her, I was doing animal communication with her, saying, okay, so what do you want, and how can we help you best? And I was also using some of the healing techniques that I'd learnt for myself as well, because just about actually, I don't think I've done any healing technique that doesn't translate across to animals anyway. So I was using the healing techniques with her as well. Now, at the end of, so most fractures are normally 6 to 8 weeks. At the end of that time, the vet came out and reassessed her and said, she's fine, And then this little mare, she actually went on to be with somebody else after that, because our it was a little bit after that, but our time together was coming to a close. And she went to a young teenage girl who wanted to go everywhere fast, to gallop. And then I watched these pair gallop around the paddock, and then around the stable area. And so she'd made a complete recovery. And so, to my way of thinking, that was one of the things, because it's talking to her and getting her involved in her own healing process. So,
It's very interesting, Davina, and you just impacted me to ask you, for example, how let's say that human people and pet can communicate on energetical level. This is very interesting, as you say that this is a way that people can also heal. Sometimes I know when I was when I was in my childhood, and when you have your cat very close to you and have somewhere of pain on your body, it just can come to you and say, okay, that's just go there when you have a pain. So that's kind of, you just initiate me to ask that question.
so basically, it's using like the four clairs. So you've got clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, and claircognizance. And each person is going to be stronger in one or maybe two of the clairs than the others. So when I'm communicating with an animal, it tends to be I feel it and I will see it. And sometimes I just hear stuff as well. So I guess actually there's three of the clairs that come into play when I'm working with somebody. And so, but the hardest part of animal communication is learning to trust yourself. So, like when you have that communication with an animal, it's often subtle. It's like that little, that soft stroke of a kitten's paw, as long as they don't have nails out, but like that soft stroke. That's like how it starts. It's soft like that. And I guess this kind of merges into another question, like the other reason people come to see me often is because of behavioral issues. And they go, well, because I primarily work with cats, dogs, and horses. And people will say, well, my cat, my dog, or my horse is acting up. They're, peeing on the carpet. They're tearing up, the kids' toys. They're doing, destructive behavior, or loud, or not listening to me, or blah, blah, blah. So what my experience has been where animal communication comes in is that when our animals are acting up, they're like, if you want to put it in terms, they're like a child, and the child is trying to communicate something to its parents, and the parents aren't quite getting it. So the child says softly, Mum, Dad, I need a new pencil for school. And then it gets a bit louder until the kid is shouting, Mum and Dad, I need a pencil for school, and it can be because the parents aren't listening, because they're distracted, or they're, they've been thinking about what their day is like at work, or something else going on with other kids in the family, or just simply they're just not tuned in so much to what the child's saying. So our animals are exactly the same. When they start acting up, there's something they want to communicate to us. And it actually is quite surprising what it can be that they're wanting to communicate. So like I had a lady I was working with, and she actually had to get someone into dog sit for her because her dog was that worked up when she went out, and her solution was to get a dog sitter. And the dog sitter actually recommended that they get me in. And I went in to talk to the lady and the animal, because it's never just, I don't just talk to the human or just to the animal. It's actually like really what I'm there to facilitate the conversation between the human and the animal. And And what it actually transpired in that case was that the lady had recently lost a family member, and she thought she'd done all her, grieving about it, and she'd processed everything about it. But there was one little element that she hadn't processed. And that was actually what the dog wanted to communicate. So when she did that, then harmony came back to the household. So the feedback that I got later was that the dog had settled down because the message had been not only heard, but it had been received. So I guess it's like us when we're trying to communicate something and somebody isn't hearing us or receiving it, we tend to act up.
And my question for you is also when someone come to you and need help for the horse or dog or cat, do you always need to be present? Or sometimes, for example, if someone wanted to ask you online as for the advice, can you help them in that way? Either that
Yeah,
they
actually,
come to you and they need just to get the dog and to come to you, with that dog or cat. But also there are people who maybe need some kind of that help, and they cannot physically come to you because of different areas in the world or however. And can you help? Did you have some kind of experience in that way to help people in a way to solve their problem with their pet?
actually, I do pretty well all my work these days over Zoom. I don't tend to, because for that very reason, that way the person and their pet is comfortable in their own home. Um, and I can serve people all over the world. So that's why my model is primarily Zoom. Um, if there's some people in the local area that want me to do face to face, I will do it like within about 50 k's of them in northern suburbs of Brisbane. But basically it's via Zoom, because energy, like I was saying earlier about energy is energy. So I can pick up the energy over Zoom. I don't actually need, so I can, call the energy in of the animal and the human. I actually don't need them um, physically present. And the other thing I also say to people is that sometimes people worry about, oh, my dog or my cat, obviously a horse probably, unless they're in the paddock, isn't going to do it, but my dog or my cat won't sit right next to me whilst I'm talking to you. And I'm like, that's fine, because they send their energy to the session. And then if they need to walk outside or they need to walk in and out whilst we're doing the session, that's perfectly fine, because the energy is there and we're working with the energy, not with the physicality so much. So so that's how. And then the other thing is, then also sometimes I do work with people that have maybe multiple dogs, like maybe multiple dogs, dog or cat, multiple variations. The animals will sort themselves out in that case. So you'll find the primary, the most dominant one will come first, and then everyone else will sort of shuffle themselves through the rest of the session. So like, it's like sometimes, we overthink. It's like, oh my goodness, how will this all work out? The animals just take care of it and they sort it out for themselves.
And and thank you for sharing that. It's very interesting because you do, like as I do, KSM podcast, going business on with Kristina globally. So that's kind of that you have so open doors everywhere, because you can go global and you can work online. So that's really fantastic, and congratulations on that, because dear audience, just if you have any kind of and problem with and pain points with your pet, please, I will share all links so that you can connect with Davina to help you. It doesn't matter where you are where you are in the world. It's
Yeah.
very, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And also to make it easier for people, once they go onto my website, I then have like booking my calendar's there, so they can access my calendar, pick a time that suits them, and yeah, and just sort of organize a session that way. So I've tried to make it as easy as possible for people. So.
And to be honest, today I just really wanted to share with you that I'm so excited with you as my special guest speaker because you're very unique because through many of my guest speakers for this 5 years, how I run the podcast, you're very unique with this kind of support in terms of uh, helping. Owners of pets to take care about them and to solve their problems. And I know today, before we started today, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about something specifically, like about
Mhm.
that connection between pets and and people and human. And I would love just to stress it out about it and to share with our audience about it.
So the other part I wanted to share about was that so whilst I started with the animal communication and doing that, something happened for me mid last year. So in my background, I'm pointing that way. I have a beautiful black and white dog in the photo. And that was my beautiful soul dog, Dabrowski. And he was a rescue, but of course, who rescued whom is he rescued me as much as we rescued him from the local shelter. Um, and he was in my life for 11 years. And one of the things that I always dreaded the day that he was going to have to pass because I didn't know how I was going to survive without him because he was my rock. Over the times that he was in my life changed so much. I had so many things happen. Um, and he was there through all of it. You know, when we had another dog as well at that time. So we adopted two dogs from the shelter at the same time, Dabrowski and a girl, a German Shepherd Kelpie Cross, who was older than him. So we adopted both of them at the same time. But Dabrowski was mine. I was his human. He was my boy. We were both really, really clear about that. And he was actually quite a funny boy because just slightly go off the topic for a moment, because this ties into animal communication. When we rang the shelter said that they thought he was deaf. They hadn't completely done the tests, but they actually felt that he was deaf. And I'm like, okay, I don't see a problem because for me, he was an energetic being. So we could communicate energetically. And whether he had the physical deafness or not, I knew we could always communicate energetically. So, yep, fine, no problems. So anyway, so we got him, we brought him home. Now, whilst I would use my voice to communicate with him, I also communicated with him a lot energetically as well. But and you know, the only time I ever had a problem was that sometimes like any kid, if he was following a scent somewhere and he was distracted, he would be a little slower to respond. And then sometimes if he didn't want to respond, he would turn his head away and he would go, "Oh, Mama, I can't see you. And if I can't see you, I don't know what you're saying." And I'm like, "You're talking to me. You can't pull that crap on me." And he would just go, "Okay, Mum." Um, so I really called him my soul dog because we had that deep, deep, deep connection. And like I said, I was really, really, there was that fear of how will I cope when he passes and afterwards. So my mother passed early last year. Dabrowski was with me through that. And at that time he was starting to get there were some health issues, so we were seeing the vet to, help him with that. And I said to him at the time when Mum passed, I'm like, "Please don't leave me right now, to cope with Mum and you at the same time, would be a big ask. So please, please don't leave me." And he didn't. But a few months later, I was actually all upset in the stomach. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? You know? Um, and I had that for like about a day or so. And then one day, like, yeah, about 2 days later, I'm looking around the room and I'm like, there's something off. What's going on? This is not just a tummy upset. This is an emotional thing. There's something going on. And he was leaning over the back of the lounge to look at me. And I looked at him and I'm like, oh no, you have to go, don't you? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, okay. So I let myself cry as much as I needed to. Um, but then I also started to look at, okay, so what do I need to do to make this transition the easiest as possible for both he and I, and on the rest of the family as well? So I did my planning. I organised for a vet to come out to the house because I wanted him to pass surrounded by family. Um, he, within about 4 days of letting me know he had to go, he, passed. Now, we did get the vet to help him make that final transition, but he was pretty close to doing it himself anyway. But it was planned. Like I read that morning, hubby and I and the other dogs. So we had 3 other dogs at the time. We have about 4, so sort of I'm just going, what was that at the time? So we spent, the morning just with him, and then the afternoon the vet came out. I let put the dogs outside whilst the vet was here, but then let them back inside so they could say their goodbyes. We had a little burial service for him, like a small ritual, just to say goodbye and stuff like that. And I created some of my own rituals for not only his time of passing, but for afterwards, like a song that, our song, and stuff like that. So, but as a result of that, he was actually the impetus, it's not quite the word, the sort of the catalyst for starting the new part of my business called Sacred Companions of Peaceful Transition. So that was actually a little part of the business before, but once he passed, it became it became actually part of the business in its own right. And because what I found through that is that there's a grief that's called disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief is a grief that's actually not recognized by society as a whole. So if you lose, like when I lost my mother, a lot of people said, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, blah, 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 blah. But there's a certain part of society, if you say to them, I have lost my dog and I am absolutely distraught, they actually don't get it because they go, it's just a dog, it's just a cat, it's just a horse, whatever, But how our family unit is changing, like our particular family unit, the dogs in particular, they're with us most of the time. And as a matter of fact, as I speak, I have one under the desk laying on my foot, so they're very much a part of our lives. And a matter of fact, that sometimes they're closer to us than the human family members, because dogs in particular have the non-judgment. And they just go, I love you. Yes, you had a ratty day at work and you maybe came home and yelled at me, but I still love you. And oh, yes, thank you. I love you too, So that kind of uncomplicated love makes it easier in some ways to be closer to our animals than sometimes to our human members of family. And there's actually been studies done where there's been people who've said, I have been more affected by animal loss than the loss of human family members, And that's part of Sacred Companions. In Sacred Companions, I set that up to work with people one-on-one and do tailored work with them to help them during the transition time, before, during, and afterwards. Because if they don't have anyone else in their community who can support them, then, I can help support them in, set up an individual program and help them. And it's not only then, it's then with the afterwards, it's looking at, well, what gifts did our animals bring us by being in our lives and through the transition process? So instead of it being something I've just got to get through this, it's about something about taking your time with the grief and sitting with it and not trying to push it down. And so I guess one of my big things, starting to make that ripple change out to the world of grief is not something just to be pushed down. It's actually something to it's part of a ritual of life. It's part of our human experience. And grief is in many forms. Like the disenfranchised grief isn't just about animals. Like, a great example is miscarriages. Like, women are not encouraged to talk. If they're pregnant, they're not encouraged to talk until they're 3 months pregnant. But if they lose the child anywhere up to that 3 months, it's still a loss for them. And yet they're not encouraged to, oh, well, it wasn't a fully fledged, wasn't a fetus yet, it wasn't born, but that is a definite form of grief. So what, my brighter part of Sacred Companions is actually going out and talking to people and saying it's okay to grieve. And not only is it okay, it's actually natural and normal. And then, giving themselves, people trusting themselves and giving themselves permission to grieve about the events in their lives, and celebrating, and in a way celebrating I know that sounds a bit weird to celebrate the grief, but celebrating the time, like when somebody's left, like we often will have, I have Irish ancestry, so we have a wake, which is actually before the funeral, but it's about celebrating, getting together with family and celebrating the life of the one who has gone, celebrating what they meant to you and what you'd learned from them. And like I say to people, like, love never dies. It simply changes form. Like my Dabrowski, I still feel him around and I still feel his guidance and his presence, but he's just not in a physical form anymore.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I understand you because last year I lost my amazing cat, and we were so close to him, and I was thinking, okay, maybe you have gone to the better place. It was like and crying, as you said, I'm still with him sometimes when we spent with him maybe 5 years. So he was a kitten, like on our other cat, but it was very interesting cat, and so that's like it was like a member of our family, and I really understand that. And Davina, I want have some question. How people, when we get new pet and in our life, when they come to our life, do we need to prepare? We know that one day that path will go anyway. However, like and we after that maybe we can buy the new one or get new one, but also how people can just think about. We need to, as you mentioned, to and it's so true to celebrate it like that. We spent some time in our life with that family member with our amazing pet. So, but people need to know how people can just prepare for that before they get some new pet in their life, just to in that and that's so true. Energetical level, it's very very important. I mean, to communicate in that way.
That one is actually like people need to sort of look at their individual circumstances and work out what is, like, listen to themselves and trust their intuition as what's the best way forward for them. So what we did, because we started out with the two dogs and we could see that they were aging, and particularly my Dabrowski, even though I didn't want to see it, but hubby could. He's like, well, he's slowing down a little bit. Like he was always quite fast zooming around and having the zoomies and stuff. So, and we'd been minding a puppy for somebody. We ended up, it was about 6 months we were minding this puppy. And when the puppy left, I was like, oh, I so miss having that puppy energy around the place. And so we decided to actually get a third dog to hopefully liven Dabrowski up a little bit. Lou was always a little bit more standoffish, particularly with other females, but liven Dabrowski up a little bit. And it for us, it kind of worked and kind of didn't. So it did liven Dabrowski up a little bit. He loved to play zoomies with Daisy. We got her at 5 months old. And she's our eldest dog now, but we got her and she livened him up a little bit, but really to liven him up more, we probably really should have done it about 12 months, 18 months before we did. But on the other side, we actually weren't ready. There was stuff going on. We actually weren't ready for another dog at that time. So it's weighing everything up. But when there's a potential new puppy that we're looking at, I actually energetically connect to the puppy and go, or dog, depending on their age, energetically connect and go, okay, well, this is who we are. This is what we have to offer, this is what our house looks like. And in terms of family members, we've got the dogs, we've got the horses, we've got the chickens. Do you want to join our family? And then the other side of that, which I must admit I'm personally probably a bit slack on, is then also going to our current family members and going, okay, so this is who's looking at joining the family as everyone, so we can get that harmonious family, the family harmony between all the family members. But then I also do some different things, like I'll also do like an energy healing grid, just to also help integrate, because every time we bring somebody new in, and because we've had two family members, like Dabrowski passed last year, Lou passed earlier this year. So we've brought two new dogs into the family in the last probably 9 months. We've brought two new dogs into the family. But then I do healing grids as well, just to help integrate all the energies of everyone and make things a little bit more harmonious. So, for me, it's like, okay, what can I do? On a physical level, we've got everyone introducing, all the dogs sniffing each other. But what can I also do on the energetic level to make things that much more harmonious? And that's something that, people can do as well. So like, obviously you if you're bringing in a new dog, if you're thinking of it, if you adopt from a shelter, they want you to take your old dogs in so they can do a meet and a greet. Old dogs, I mean existing dogs. So that you've got that physical level. But yeah, then also, it's and you can do different things, like there's different natural remedies out there that for natural remedies for different things that happen. You can do, there's a place here I know in Australia that has a sibling, it's like a natural remedy, and I've not used it, but I've looked on their website. I think you put it in water or something, so when you've got sibling rivalry, you can actually help smooth things out. So that's another way. Like I use crystals and energy, but then there's also the plant medicine of the natural remedies and things like that people can use to help because we all want a harmonious, peaceful, fun household.
And there are people who say if you have dog, for example, in your family is much more, have like much more peace, in terms much more calm, that people like just that energy of that dog just can connect all family members to be much more in connection, and just not just zooming everywhere, but just to be if they have some maybe uh, if they argue, or something like that, that dog can help you to be much more in to be calm, how can I say that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, there are those studies that they do that actually like if you're stressed, actually, patting, a dog or a cat, or a horse, because that can actually help reduce your stress levels because you're sort of, well, for one thing, you're grounding, and the biggest thing people are so much in their head, particularly since we're so much with technology these days. A lot of people, looking at their little devices all the time, and so we're very much in the head, or not so much in our body and grounding, and so yet when we're with our animals, they're sort of, well, they've got, for one thing, they've got 4 feet, so they're much more grounded than us with the 2 feet. But just by patting them, you're sort of like, just you start to breathe, take your longer, deeper breaths, which is much more calming for your nervous system. And then you sort of, get much more peaceful and relaxed when you do that.
It's very, very interesting, so and we're so happy people when we have our pets just to be with us as our family members, to take care about them, to feed them, to look after whatever we can do for them. That's pretty good. I mean, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's very interesting. Do you have something for, you mentioned that you have your free consultation that listeners can connect with you on I will put all links below this episode, and people can also listen on Spotify, on Apple Audio. There are more than 20 platforms, and also YouTube channel, and it will be on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all those. Or if you have something like do you have some kind of freebie for our listeners or something like that? I didn't ask you before, but maybe just or I don't know or you have some like a checklist or some, I don't know, some kind of ebook or something like that people can connect with that or on your website.
Mhm. So I have the two websites. I have thepetenergytherapy.com, which is about the animal communication side. I have a free workbook there that people can download just to give them some, ideas about animal communication and sort of looking at that better relationship with their animal. And then I have Sacred Pet Transitions, which is for my Sacred Companions um, part of the business. And there I have a free pre-grief workbook. So that's something for people to download, to sort of like if they've been to the vet and they've got the diagnosis, and they're just looking at their animals, seeing it that their animal companion's getting old, or know that the time is getting closer. It's just some stuff to start to think about, to sort of, because the grieving obviously starts before the actual transition time. Once they're getting older and you see that they're not moving as fast, or there's some different health issues that you see start to creep in. The grieving really starts then, because that the ending is closer than you would like it to be. So I have those resources that they can download. And then I also offer a free discovery call it a heart-to-heart call, but that's a free half-hour discovery call just to see what's going on for the human and their animal, and then just to sort of see, well, what of my products would be the best use for them, or the most helpful for them. So because there's 3 different types of animal communication services I offer. And then there's the Sacred Companions, which is a longer, that's a 6-month tailored package where I work one-on-one with the people and their animals. And the difference for that is that then we work before, during, and after the transition. So it's not just, oh, well, your animal's died, you're off on your own. It's like, okay, what for the afterwards, helping them to integrate, the messages from the animal's presence in their life. And also, because then beings are energetic, still being able to connect to the spirit of their animal, and then seeing messages of comfort. Like, I know for me it's been quite comforting being able to still connect with my Dabrowski.
And Davina, knowing you today and having you as special guest speaker, I think that all owners of pets will be more happy to get to know you because they can move in their life if they just don't think about transition, everything what you said. But I think that it's easier in our life getting to know you, getting to know you, that you exist in this world, because just it's such amazing opportunity to get to know you. And there is one lady who does something like that. That's pretty good. And just for it's easier for life to have new pets, to have our new family members in terms of our pets. Either is it a dog or cat or horse, that's really amazing. I love that. And
And also,
also,
oh, yeah. So then to add to that is, I also completed my Masters of Holistic Counselling last year as well. So that, I also bring that to the any sessions I do, but particularly to the sacred companion sessions. I bring in the holistic counselling. But then also, like, I have the lived experience. Like, I didn't actually talk about today, but my beloved mare Dole was actually my first, well, of the current animals we have. She passed a couple of years ago. And she was a big mentor and a big influence in my life. So, she passed, and then I was dealing with that. And then, through the background of this, I had my mother. I knew for 3 years she was going to pass before she actually did. Anyway, that was a whole grief journey on its own. And then, I had my Dabrowski. So it's like I can actually, like, I have walked this path multiple times. And because we still have a large animal family, I will be walking it more times as well. But, it's not just this intellectual book learning of, oh, well, yes, you can do this. It's like, I've been this. This is from my lived experience of being with the animals of mine and of clients, helping clients through it and their animals as well.
that's good. And we can also I can invite you to maybe to you will be guest again in my new episode, and so we can talk about holistic counseling. So that will be something new, because you have a lot to share with us, and just I think that only one episode is not quite enough for that. And before we ramp up our show today, where also I will put links, as I said, but where are you mostly present on social media? On LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram? Do you have your specific channel, platform, or listeners can find you all three, although on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram?
Yep, I'm on. Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. I'm not actually very active on YouTube, but I do have a YouTube channel. So, but yeah, I'm more active on the Facebook, the LinkedIn, and the Instagram. So the Instagram, LinkedIn, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Davina. And I will put all links and everything. So if you wanted to, you have also you can download that ebook, and also you can connect with Davina. If you have any kind of problem with your pet, so just please connect with Davina. She can help you a lot. And yeah, it's such amazing time today to talk to you, and I really enjoyed. And to be honest, I learned a lot, because it's such this is an area which I'm not too connected too much, but I learn a lot, and also our audience will learn as well. So thank you, Davina, and thank you so much for joining today and share such an amazing experience and life experience and business experience and everything what you experience in your life in terms of animals, pets, and etc. Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
thank you for having me, Kristina. I've really enjoyed myself.
Thank you for joining, and see you very soon in our new episode. I think that we'll connect again this year. Thank you so much and have a lovely day. And bye for now.